"Mom, you're behind on payments," my son said casually over dinner, as if he were reminding me to buy milk, not telling me I owed money on something I had never touched. I remember the exact moment because I was holding my fork midair, a piece of roasted chicken cooling at the tip, and something inside me went very still. Behind on payments. The words didn't belong to my life. Not anymore. Not after Harold passed, and I learned how to stretch every dollar of my fixed income. Not after I canceled subscriptions, learned to keep the thermostat at 68 in winter, and started cutting my own coupons again like I did in my 30s. I didn't respond right away. I just set my fork down, slowly, carefully, like any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile version of reality I had been living in. "What payments?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Daniel glanced at Rachel before answering, just for a second, but I saw it. "I see more than they think I do." "The loan, Mom," he said, already reaching for his glass of water. "You've been getting notices." I hadn't. That was the part that stayed with me. Not confusion. Not anger. Absence. Silence where something should have been. Because I check my mail every afternoon at exactly 4:15. It's part of my routine now. Something small I can control. I remember the walk to the mailbox, the way the late afternoon sun hits the sidewalk, the sound of the metal door when it opens. I would have seen notices. I would have remembered. That night, after they left, I stood in my kitchen longer than usual. The house felt the same, but I didn't. I opened drawers I hadn't opened in months. Moved stacks of old coupons. Checked behind the bread box. That's when I found it. A single envelope, wedged flat against the back of the drawer like it had been pressed there intentionally. White. Official. Unopened. My name typed cleanly across the front. But the address, not quite right. Close enough to pass at a glance. Wrong enough to matter. I held it in my hands for a long time before opening it. My fingers didn't tremble. That surprised me. I thought they would. But instead, everything felt precise. Measured. I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled. The paper inside was thick. Formal. Unforgiving. Final notice. The words were bold. Direct. No softness. No mistake. I read the first paragraph once. Then again. Then a third time, slower. Loan. Balance due. Missed payments. Penalties. All in my name. All tied to an account I had never opened. I folded the letter carefully along its original crease and set it on the table. Then I looked around my kitchen, at the same cabinets Harold installed 25 years ago, at the same clock ticking above the stove, at the same quiet life I thought I understood. And for the first time, I realized something simple. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had made sure I didn't see this. And suddenly, the silence in my mailbox made sense. I spent the rest of that afternoon not doing anything unusual, and that was the point. I washed the dishes I had already washed that morning. I wiped down the same counters twice. I even watered the small plant by the window, although it did not need it. Routine can be a kind of shield if you use it correctly. By the time the sun began to lower, I had arranged everything in my mind into something that resembled order. Facts first, assumptions later, emotion last. That evening, Daniel called. He does not call often, not without a reason. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom, just checking in," he said, his tone light, almost rehearsed. In the background, I could hear dishes clinking, Rachel moving around their kitchen. I pictured it clearly. Their open floor plan. The large island. The expensive fixtures they installed last year. Things I noticed but never questioned. "I am fine," I replied. "I went to the bank today." There was a pause. Small. Brief. But real. "Oh," he said too quickly. "What for?" I walked to the window as I spoke, looking out at the quiet street, the same street I had lived on for 38 years. "I had a question about my account," I said. I did not offer more. Silence is useful. It makes the other person fill the space. "Everything okay?" he asked. I could hear it now. The edge beneath his voice. Not concern. Calculation. I let a second pass. Then another. "They showed me a loan," I said. Finally. Simple. Direct. No accusation. On the other end, something shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough. "Right?" he said, clearing his throat. "That. I meant to talk to you about it." "Meant to." I leaned my hand against the cool glass of the window. "When?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "We have just been busy," he said. "You know how things are." I did know. Or at least, I knew what he wanted me to believe. "The address is yours," I continued, still calm. Still even. Why would my mail go to your house? There it was. The question that mattered. Not the loan. Not the money. The control. The line went quiet long enough that I could hear my own breathing. Then Rachel's voice in the background, low but urgent. I could not make out the words, but I recognized the tone. Prompting. Guiding. He came back a second later, his voice steadier now. We thought it would be easier, Mom, he said. You have mentioned before that you sometimes forget things. Important things. We were just trying to help manage it. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not because I was hurt, but because I wanted to hear that sentence clearly, exactly as it was meant. Not help. Control disguised as concern. I do not remember asking for help, I said. He exhaled sharply. It is not a big deal, he replied. Everything is under control. Under control. I opened my eyes and looked back at the room around me. My house. My life. Yes, I said quietly. I can see that. We ended the call shortly after that. No argument. No raised voices. Just a careful exchange of words that meant far more than either of us said out loud. When I set the phone down, I did not feel smaller. I felt certain. Because now I understood something I had only suspected before. This had not started recently. It had been building, piece by piece, decision by decision, each one small enough to ignore on its own, until it was not small anymore. I walked to the drawer where I had found the letter and opened it again, looking at the empty space where it had been hidden. That was when I realized something else. If they had been controlling what I saw, then there was more I had not seen yet. And that meant the truth was still incomplete. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had somewhere to be, but because my mind had already moved ahead of me. I lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, letting the quiet settle before I moved. There is a difference between reacting and preparing, and I had no intention of reacting. I dressed slowly, choosing the same gray cardigan I always wore on ordinary days, the one that made me look exactly like the version of myself they had already decided I was. Predictable, manageable, easy to guide. In the kitchen, I made my coffee the same way I always had, measuring each spoon carefully, waiting for the machine to finish its slow, familiar drip. But this time, I did not turn on the television. I wanted silence. I wanted to hear my own thoughts clearly. I sat at the table with the bank documents spread neatly in front of me, alongside the letter I had found. I read through each page again, not looking for emotion, but for patterns, dates, signatures, authorizations. There it was again. My name. Signed. Repeated more than once. I have signed my name thousands of times in my life. On checks. On school forms for Daniel. On documents when Harold and I bought this house. I know the rhythm of it. The pressure. The slight curve at the end of the last letter. What I saw on those pages was close. Close enough to pass if someone was not looking carefully. But I was looking carefully. I traced the printed signature lightly with my finger, not to confirm what I already knew, but to understand how far this had gone. This was not a single moment. Not a single decision. This was a process. Something repeated. Practiced. Refined. After breakfast, I did something I had not done in years. I went to the small cabinet in the hallway where Harold used to keep our old records. Insurance papers. Property documents. Tax returns from years we barely remembered. I had not touched that cabinet since he passed. Not because I could not, but because I did not need to. Or at least, I thought I did not. I pulled the drawer open slowly, the wood making a soft, familiar sound. Inside, everything was exactly as we had. Left it. Organized. Labeled. Careful. Harold believed in keeping things in order. He used to say that paperwork tells a story if you are patient enough to read it. I began pulling out old documents, comparing signatures, checking dates, matching patterns. It took time. More time than I expected. But piece by piece, the story began to shift. There were gaps. Months where I had no record of receiving anything. Periods where activity increased without explanation. It was subtle, designed to be overlooked. But now that I was looking, I could not unsee it. Around noon, I sat back in my chair and looked at the spread of papers across the table. My table. My home. My life laid out in black ink and quiet decisions made without me. I did not feel overwhelmed. I felt focused. Because now I understood something else. They had not just taken control of my mail. They had taken control of the timing. What I saw, when I saw it, what I signed, and what I never knew existed. I gathered the papers carefully, stacking them in order, aligning each edge with precision. Then I placed them back into my purse, alongside the letter and the documents from the bank. I stood there for a moment, my hand resting lightly on the table, and I allowed myself one final thought before moving forward. If they believed I was unaware, then that was their advantage. But if I remained quiet, if I let them continue believing that, then it would become